Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Secretary, welcome. I agree with you, by the way, for what it's worth, about getting the money out on the streets, literally. Let's see, I'm looking at your budget here. Your current budget is $12.5 billion. You're asking for $14.2 billion. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
That's a 14% increase. You want an extra $1.7 billion.
Yeah.
Okay. Explain to me why the American people would be better off giving you $1.7 billion than taking that $1.7 billion and spending it on infrastructure. I did a little math, and for $1.7 billion, we can resurface a 4-lane highway from Washington to Denver. So why are the American people better off giving you more money than putting it on infrastructure?
Well, thank you very much, Senator, and thank you for the question. It's a great question, and I think the way I would think about it is the $1.7 billion increase to the budget, my budget, is an investment in infrastructure as well. It's an infrastructure.
It's what? I'm sorry?
Infrastructure investment as well. It's an infrastructure investment in the American worker in this country. It's an opportunity for us to look at, as I think about the Department of Labor.
Well, do you believe excuse me for interrupting, I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, we don't have much time. Do you believe that every expenditure by the federal government is an investment? What's the difference between an investment and an expenditure?
An investment is an investment in the future of workers. An expenditure is an expenditure in building a bridge.
Okay. Well, if you have a union background, which I respect and admire, if we took $1.7 billion that you say you need more to run your department, and we spent that on infrastructure, that's going to create a lot of union jobs, isn't it?
It's going to create a lot of jobs, but we're also not going to be able to educate the workforce that needs those new jobs that are going to be created off of that infrastructure investment of new bridges.
But they're already educated. The people building the roads are already educated. They're good at what they do.
Well, Senator Reid just mentioned of an issue around literacy in this country. So again, it's an investment in helping people to be able to be retrained and trained in the jobs of the future. I come out of construction. I worked construction as well. The construction industry that I worked on in the early 90s and late 90s is different than the construction industry of today.
Yes, sir. Let me stop you for a second. I don't want to get too far afield here into a history of the construction industry. I used to work construction too. Let me be sure I understand what you're saying. When my constituents call me and they say, look, you're being asked to raise taxes to pay for infrastructure, why, instead of putting $1.7 billion in extra taxes on us, why'd you give $1.7 billion to the Department of Labor? Why didn't you use that for infrastructure? Am I just supposed to say because the Department of Labor says they're going to make an investment? What metrics are you going to use this time next year to be able to prove to this Congress that your investment paid off better than $1.7 billion in infrastructure?
Well, before I answer that, let me just quickly go back to the tax question. I think the beauty for your constituents is that the infrastructure bills that's being negotiated right now does not raise taxes on the average American who earns under $400,000. So the average American is not paying for that.
That's not true.
Okay, well, that's not why I'm here today.
We just have to agree to disagree. Let me move on because I've got 1 minute left and I like to stay within my time. Does your agency conduct surveys?
As far as employee surveys?
Any surveys?
We do, yes.
Okay. Do you pay people?
Pay the people to do the surveys?
No, to take the survey.
I actually don't know the answer to that.
Well, here's what I'm asking. I'm not.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I need your help finding something out. One of my constituents got this in the mail. It's a letter. I know it's not under your jurisdiction, from the Census Bureau, and they asked him to fill out a form on children's health. And he opened it up, and look what fell out: a $5 bill. And there's no reference in the letter to the $5 in cash he got from the federal government. What's this all about?
I have no idea.
Can you help me find out?
I will help you find out.
I didn't
get one of those letters.
Well, I filled out my census, my survey, I want $5. And I
did too.
understand that the Biden administration is also sending people $40 gift cards.
I doubt that's from the Biden administration, but I will look
I
into
looked it up. It's on the internet. It must be true.
I will look into it, my friend.
Would you?
I promise.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
All right, sir.
Senator Shaheen.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
John Kennedy did what almost nobody in Congress does anymore. He asked a simple question using common sense instead of political spin. If the Department of Labor already has a budget of $12.5 billion, why exactly do they suddenly need another $1.7 billion from taxpayers? And Kennedy framed it perfectly. He pointed out that $1.7 billion could resurface a 4-lane highway from Washington to Denver. That is real infrastructure, real results, real jobs. Something Americans can actually see with their own eyes instead of another bloated federal program hidden behind fancy language and bureaucratic buzzwords. But the Labor Secretary immediately went into classic Washington mode. Everything is suddenly an investment. That's always the word they use when they want more money. It's never spending. It's never waste. It's never expansion of government power. It's always an investment. Kennedy absolutely destroyed that talking point the second he asked the obvious follow-up. What's the difference between an investment and an expenditure? And the answer completely fell apart, because deep down, Washington politicians and bureaucrats honestly believe every dollar they take from taxpayers automatically becomes noble the second the federal government spends it. That's the mindset Kennedy was exposing here. What made this exchange even better was Kennedy refusing to let the hearing get buried under long-winded political speeches. The secretary kept trying to pivot into broad philosophical arguments about retraining workers and the future of labor markets, and Kennedy kept dragging him back to reality. Americans are struggling right now. Families are paying more for groceries, more for gas, more for utilities, more for housing. And Washington's answer is always the same: give us even more money. Kennedy represented exactly what millions of Americans are thinking. If infrastructure spending creates jobs already, especially union construction jobs, then why does the Department of Labor need another massive funding increase on top of it? And notice something else. The secretary tried slipping in the familiar talking point that the infrastructure negotiations don't raise taxes on anyone under $400,000. Kennedy immediately shut that down with, "That's not true." Boom. No hesitation, no backing off, no nervous politician language, because Americans have heard that line before. Washington always claims new spending somehow magically costs nothing. Then inflation goes up, debt explodes, and middle-class Americans get crushed while politicians pretend the bill never arrived. But honestly, the most unbelievable moment came at the end. Kennedy suddenly pulls out this letter from the Census Bureau that one of his constituents received. And inside the envelope, a literal $5 bill, not a coupon, not a rebate, cash, taxpayer money literally being mailed out by the federal government to bribe people into filling out surveys. And the craziest part was the secretary clearly had no idea what Kennedy was talking about. That moment perfectly summed up the entire problem with the federal government today. Massive agencies spending billions of dollars, while even top officials can't explain where money is going, why it's being spent, or who approved it. That's why these hearings matter. People laugh at Kennedy's style because he uses humor and plain English instead of sounding like a robotic policy analyst. But that's exactly why his questioning is effective. He cuts through the nonsense faster than most politicians in Washington. He talks the way regular Americans talk, and regular Americans understand something Washington elites don't. Every dollar the government spends came from somebody who worked for it first. That matters. At a time when the national debt is exploding, and Americans are being told to accept higher prices everywhere, watching bureaucrats casually ask for another $1.7 billion while struggling to justify it is exactly the kind of thing making voters lose trust in government institutions. Kennedy exposed the entire mindset in one hearing: more spending, more bureaucracy, more vague promises, more investments. Somehow the answer is always to send Washington another check. Meanwhile, the roads still need fixing, cities are struggling, and taxpayers are expected to just keep funding an endless machine nobody can fully explain anymore. This is why anti-establishment politics keeps growing in America. Because moments like this make people feel like nobody in Washington is actually guarding taxpayer money except a handful of people willing to ask uncomfortable questions. And Kennedy asked those questions directly to their faces. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and comment below. Do you trust Washington bureaucracies with more taxpayer money, or do you think Congress should start cutting spending instead?